Right now I live in a small town called Oliphant, Ontario. It's north of Owen Sound.
What's your background heritage?
I was born in Canada. My mother was born in Czechoslovakia, and my father was also born in Canada, but his parents were from Scotland.
So you're European Canadian?
Yes, but I've never said that. I've always just said Canadian.
Well, I'm from China.
Right.
And people usually call me Chinese Canadian.
Right.
And since you're from Europe,
yes, you would
then
think
therefore you would be European Canadian. That's right.
Yeah, and I guess it's just you're right, but
yeah.
I've just never said it or thought of it.
Chinese Canadians or Canadians. It's quite clear that people tend to label others who look Chinese as Chinese Canadians and not truly Canadians. But why is this?
Well, to be truly Canadian, you need to have, I guess, been the true pioneers and laid the foundations for what Canada is today. I just don't think the Chinese Canadians have done that.
I beg to differ. Consider the European pioneers that settled in the prairies in the 1900s.
Yeah, but what about them?
My question is, don't you think they're getting too much of the credit for settling the prairies?
What are you talking about?
What I mean is, the Chinese Canadians built the CPR that linked Eastern Canada to Western Canada, and because of that, they deserve to be recognized, along with the Europeans, as some of the most important pioneers in Canadian history. Let's see what my high school textbook has to say about this. It does mention the CPR, and it talks about all the hard work that they had to do. But it doesn't really link the efforts of these Chinese Canadians with how important it was that this railroad was built as soon as possible.
Well, yeah, our teacher talked about the CPR during our history class, but it was only really a really small, brief discussion, and they didn't really mention what the Chinese did, but how the British and the Europeans were the ones who built it and then who had the idea of building it, and then what was going on between them. Well, I don't think the CPR should be the only topic that's been covered in the history textbook. I mean, we, the Chinese, helped to shape the history of Canada. And then our feeling, our background, what happened to our family, and also our contribution also matters. My father was one of the workers during the Pacific Railway. That really influenced him because it helped him to think that he should serve the country as well. But I found it really ironic that his father had to pay $1,000 head tax to come to this country, since his grandfather was the one who shaped this country. For him, James Pong himself, he is an award-winning engineer, which helped Canada during the World War II by creating riveting system that created the mosquito bomber in Toronto.
Today I'll talk about the story of one of the most successful Chinese Canadian women's story, Jane Nam. She was the first woman to receive the Order of Canada for her tireless community work. Chinese women who marry Chinese nationals had their citizenship, Canadian citizenship taken away, and Jane Nam was her citizenship was taken away when she married her husband.
I want to tell the story about the first Chinese lawyer, Q. Yip. He was born in 1906. His grandfather helped to build the railway, and his father is a successful businessman in Vancouver. He worked with many other activists to expel the Chinese Exclusion Act, and due to his effort, the Chinese Exclusion Act was finally appealed in 1947.
Another example is Brian Joe. He was born in Canada himself, and his family, his grandfather, worked on the railway when he was only 16. For generations, his family fought to be recognized as a Canadian. His father, his grandfather, and him fought for that. But still, when World War II breaks out, he was not able to enlist to become the Air Force, to become a pilot, because he's a Chinese, not a Canadian. Though at last he was able to enlist, but that's when more records were needed. And he was able to enlist later, but that's when more records were needed. He said, if I'm a tail gunner and I shoot the enemy down, does they know who shot me?
The biographies and the legacies of these Chinese Canadians deserve to be discussed and to be explored, not just to be skimmed over or even completely ignored. These discussions deserve to be a mandatory part of the Canadian curriculum. After all, this isn't just Chinese Canadian history.
This is Canadian history, and it matters to me.
This is Canadian history, and it matters to me.
This is Canadian history,
and it matters to me.